I never thought my marriage would end like this. When Jessica first mentioned the party, something about it felt off. We had been together for years and I knew her habits. Occasional nights out with her friends, a few drinks, maybe some dancing, but nothing extreme. At least that's what I used to believe. But lately, things had changed. She had been distant, distracted. There were late nights with vague excuses, hushed phone calls, and a noticeable lack of warmth when we were together that I tried to ignore it at first, blaming stress, work, or just the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. But deep down, I knew something was wrong, and this party felt like a breaking point. Maybe it was the way she mentioned it so casually, like she was testing my reaction. Or maybe it was because her best friend, Lauren, had a reputation for throwing the kind of parties where boundaries disappeared. The night before, I finally voiced my concerns. "I don't think you should go," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's not about trust, Jessica. It just feels like we're not on the same page anymore. You've been different lately, and I don't know why." She rolled her eyes, her expression shifting from surprise to irritation in seconds. "Oh my God, you are being paranoid again," she snapped. "It's just a party, Daniel. Why do you always do this?" That word always hit me harder than I expected, like I was some overbearing husband, suffocating her with doubt. But that wasn't the case. I had given her space. I had trusted her. And yet, something had changed. "I'm not trying to control you," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I just feel like we're drifting apart, and I don't know why. Can we at least talk about it?" She exhaled sharply, brushing past me as she grabbed her bag. "There's nothing to talk about. You are overthinking this, like you always do." And with that, she walked out the door. I didn't stop her. I should have. But I didn't. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was done being the only one trying to hold us together. For hours, I sat in silence, checking my phone more times than I cared to admit. No texts. No calls. Just the empty house closing in around me. Then, finally, I made a choice. I opened the tracking app on my phone. Months ago, Jessica had installed it herself after misplacing her phone too many times. She had laughed about it then, saying, "At least now, if I ever go missing, you'll know where to find me." The irony wasn't lost on me. I tapped the app and waited for her location to load. I expected to see her at Lauren's house or a nearby bar. Instead, my screen showed something that made my breath catch. A motel. On the edge of town. I stared at it, hoping it was a mistake, a glitch, anything but what it clearly was. But the blinking dot stayed in place. A motel. There was no innocent explanation for that. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. The drive felt endless, though in reality, it took maybe 20 minutes. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded in my chest, a steady drumbeat of anger, betrayal, and the sinking knowledge that I already knew what I would find. When I pulled into the parking lot, I parked away from the entrance, not wanting to be seen. The place was exactly what you'd expect. A cheap, run-down building with flickering neon lights and an air of secrecy. The kind of place people go when they don't want to be found. I checked the app again. She was still here. I stepped out of the car and scanned the parking lot. And then I saw it, her car, tucked away in the far corner. That was all the confirmation I needed. My pulse pounded in my ears as I walked toward the row of motel doors. My eyes flicked to the numbers. 201, 202, 203. And then, finally, the last few rooms at the end of the lot. I didn't have to guess which one was hers. Room 214. The blinds were drawn, but the glow of a lamp seeped from the edges of the window. I raised my hand to knock but hesitated. Did I really want to know? Did I really want to see? Yes. I had to. I pressed my ear to the door. First, nothing. Then voices, hers, soft laughter. Then, a man's voice, low and confident. That was it. I banged on the door. Hard. Silence. Then, scrambling. Whispers. Panic. I banged again, louder. "Jessica, open the door." Nothing. Then, After what felt like an eternity, the door cracked open just enough for me to see her face. She looked stunned, pale. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, glancing around like she was afraid someone would see. "What am I doing here?" I repeated, my voice low, controlled. "What are you doing here?" I pushed the door open wider. And there he was, a man, sitting on the edge of the bed, his shirt half-buttoned, his face frozen in shock that I didn't recognize him. Just some guy. Jessica stepped in front of me, blocking my view, her hands raised as if she could somehow erase what I had just seen. "It's not what it looks like," she said quickly. I laughed. A cold, empty sound. "Really? Because it looks exactly like what it is." She swallowed hard, her mind racing to find an excuse, a lie, anything to make this go away. "Let me explain," she pleaded. Reaching for my arm, I pulled away, disgusted. "Explain what, Jessica? That you've been lying to me for months? That I've been sitting at home like a fool while you've been sneaking around?" Her mouth opened, but no words came, because there was nothing left to say. For the first time, she couldn't lie her way out of it. And that's when I knew it was over. I took a step back. "Was it worth it?" I asked, my voice quieter now. Not out of anger, just exhaustion. Was it worth throwing everything away? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I drove home in silence, my grip locked tight on the steering wheel, my thoughts spiraling. Jessica had tried to stop me as I walked away. I could still hear her voice in my head, frantic, desperate, trying to control the damage she had done. "Wait, please, we need to talk," she had pleaded. But what was there to say? What words could undo what I had just seen? Nothing. The truth was undeniable. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had built a life with, had thrown it all away for a cheap motel room and a man whose name I didn't even know. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the numbness had settled in. I sat in the car for a moment, staring at the darkened house. Felt different now, like a shell of something that had once been full of life. I used to think of this place as home. Now it was just walls and furniture, a monument to a marriage that no longer existed. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me out of habit. The quiet was suffocating. Normally, Jessica would be here, either watching TV or scrolling on her phone, pretending to listen when I talked about my day. Not tonight. Tonight, she was at a motel. With him, I ran a hand through my hair and exhaled sharply, forcing myself to think. What now? Was I supposed to sleep in our bed? The same bed she had probably crawled into after nights like this, acting as if nothing was wrong. No, I couldn't stay here. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started throwing clothes inside. I didn't have a plan, didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't be here when she came back. I didn't want to hear her excuses, her apologies, her pathetic attempts to rewrite the truth. She had made her choice. Now I was making mine. Once my bag was packed, I sat on the couch, staring at nothing, letting the weight of it all sink in. My hands rested on my knees, my fingers clenching and unclenching. I wasn't even angry anymore. The rage had burned out, leaving behind something worse. Emptiness. How long had this been going on? How many times had she kissed me after being with him? How many times had I sat across from her at dinner, completely unaware of the lies behind her eyes? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the Jessica I had fallen in love with was already gone. Maybe she had been for a while. I checked my phone. Still nothing from her. No texts. No calls. She was probably still with him. The thought made my stomach turn. I took a deep breath and grabbed my keys. I needed to get out of here before she showed up and started acting like this was something we could fix. I stepped out onto the porch. The cool night air hit me like a slap. Felt different, sharper, like the world itself had changed. Maybe it had. I tossed my bag into the passenger seat and started the engine. My mind ran through my options. A hotel? A friend's place? Mark, he was the only person I trusted enough to talk to right now. I pulled out of the driveway and drove aimlessly for a few minutes before finally calling him. The phone rang twice before he picked up, his voice groggy.
Hey, man.
What's up? I swallowed, my throat dry. I need a place to crash. There was a pause. Then, yeah, of course. You okay? No, but I wasn't ready to say that yet. I'll explain when I get there. I muttered. All right.
Doors open.
I hung up and focused on the road. The further I got from the house, the easier it was to breathe. When I pulled up to Mark's apartment, he was already waiting at the door, a concerned look on his face. Dude, what happened? I walked past him into the living room, dropped my bag by the couch and sat down. He closed the door behind me and sat across from me, waiting that I ran a hand over my face, then finally said it. Jessica's been cheating on me. His expression darkened. What? I nodded, staring at the floor. I caught her. I tracked her phone. She wasn't at the party. She was at a motel. Mark leaned back, exhaling sharply.
Man.
I don't even know what to say.
I'm sorry.
I shrugged. Yeah, me too. For a while, we just sat there in silence. Then he asked, what now? I sighed. I don't know. Divorce, I guess. I can't stay with her after this. Mark nodded. You shouldn't. She knew what she was doing. She knew what it would cost, and she did it anyway. He wasn't wrong that I leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes. I just need some time to figure things out. You can stay here as long as you need, Mark said. Seriously, my couch is yours. Thanks, man. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that motel room door opening. I saw Jessica's shocked expression, the guilt, the way she immediately tried to lie. And worst of all, I saw him, sitting on the edge of the bed, silent, avoiding my eyes like the coward he was. Morning came too fast that I woke up to the sound of Mark making coffee. My head pounded from lack of sleep. You look like hell, he said, handing me a mug. Feel like it too, I muttered, taking a sip. Any word from her? I shook my head. She probably thinks I'll come home eventually, that we'll have some big dramatic fight, and then I'll forgive her. Mark scoffed. She's delusional. I checked my phone. Still nothing. Maybe she stayed with him, I said bitterly. Mark frowned. Or maybe she realized she messed up and is too scared to face you. I sighed, setting my coffee down. Either way, I need to go back at some point, get my stuff, figure out the next steps. Mark nodded. You want me to go with you? No, I said. I need to do this alone. A couple of hours later, I pulled back into the driveway. I had barely stepped out of the car when I saw her, Jessica, standing at the front door, her eyes swollen, her hair a mess, wearing the same clothes from last night. She had been waiting for me. As soon as she saw me, she took a step forward. Daniel, please, just talk to me. I stared at her, feeling absolutely nothing that I walked past her. Unlocking the door, she reached for my arm. Please, just listen to me. I pulled away without looking at her. She followed me inside. It wasn't what it looked like. I laughed, the sound bitter. Really? Because it looked exactly like what it was. Tears filled her eyes. It was a mistake. I turned to her, my voice quiet but firm.
No, Jessica.
A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. What you did was a choice. She shook her head frantically. We can fix this. Please, just let me explain. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw her for what she was. Not my wife. Not my partner. Just a stranger who had betrayed me. We're done, Jessica, I said. You need to accept that. Her face crumpled. Daniel, please. But I was already walking to the bedroom, grabbing my things. This wasn't my home anymore, and she wasn't my wife. Not anymore. Jessica stood frozen in the hallway, watching as I grabbed the last of my things. Her eyes were red, her face pale, But I didn't care. Whatever guilt or sadness she felt now didn't matter. It was too late. Daniel, please, she whispered, her voice barely holding together. We can talk about this. I didn't answer. I zipped up my bag, threw it over my shoulder, and walked past her toward the door. She followed. It wasn't what you think. I was confused. Things haven't been right between us for a while, and I didn't know how to handle it. I turned to face her, my patience completely gone. So your solution was to sleep with another man? She flinched. It wasn't like that. I let out a bitter laugh. I caught you in a motel room with him, Jessica. How else was it? She wiped at her eyes, looking desperate. It didn't mean anything. It was just, stop. My voice was sharp, cutting through her pathetic attempt to justify what she had done. I don't care what excuses you come up with. It happened. You cheated. You lied. And now you want to stand here and act like we can just talk our way back to normal. I made a mistake, she choked out. But I love you. I shook my head. No, you don't. If you did, you never would have done this. Silence stretched between us. Her lips trembled as she looked down at the floor. I didn't think it would go this far. I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around the strap of my bag. You didn't think you'd get caught. She swallowed hard, but she didn't deny it that I turned toward the door. I'm done, Jessica. As I reached for the handle, she panicked. No, Daniel, wait. Don't just walk away. We can fix this. I laughed, shaking my head. Fix this. I turned back to her, meeting her tear-filled eyes. You killed our marriage the second you walked into that motel room. And you're only sorry because I found out. She took a shaky step toward me. No, I swear. I opened the door and walked out. I didn't look back. I threw my bag into the car and got in, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Through the windshield, I saw her standing in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, still crying. Good. Let her cry. Let her feel the weight of what she had done. Because I was done carrying it for her, I backed out of the driveway, watching the house shrink in my rearview mirror. The place that had once been home now felt like a prison I had finally escaped. That I drove without a destination, just letting the road take me anywhere but there. Eventually, I found myself parked outside a diner. I didn't even remember making the decision to stop. I just sat there for a while, staring out the window, trying to process everything. Then, finally, I pulled out my phone and called Mark. He picked up on the second ring.
Hey, man.
You all right? I exhaled, running a hand down my face.
No.
Where are you? Some diner off Fifth. I'm on my way. 15 minutes later, Mark slid into the booth across from me. He took one look at me and sighed. Damn. I let out a hollow chuckle. Yeah. He signaled the waitress for coffee, then leaned forward. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about last night, about tracking Jessica's phone, about the motel, the confrontation, and how she had been waiting for me this morning, trying to spin everything into something it wasn't. Mark listened, his expression growing darker with every word. When I finally finished, he sat back and shook his head. She's unbelievable. Yeah. You made the right call leaving, he said. There's no coming back from that. You know that, right? I nodded. I know. He studied me for a moment. So what's next? I let out a slow breath. Divorce. Moving out. Starting over, I guess. You need a place to stay? You know you're welcome at mine. He said. That I gave him a small smile. I appreciate it. I might take you up on that for a few days. Take as long as you need, man. I stared down at my coffee, my thoughts running in circles. You know what's crazy? I said after a moment. I don't even feel as angry as I thought I would. It's like I used up all my rage last night, and now, I just feel empty. Mark nodded. Makes sense. You're grieving, man. It's like a death, but worse, because she's still here. I hadn't thought of it like that, but he was right. Jessica wasn't gone. But the woman I had believed in, the one I had trusted, the one I had built a life with, she was. And now I had to figure out who I was without her. Mark and I sat there for another hour, talking about everything and nothing. It was the most normal I had felt in months. Eventually, I checked my phone. .2 missed calls. .1 text. Jessica, please Daniel, just talk to me. I can't lose you. I stared at the message, my jaw tightening. I deleted it. Then I blocked her number. Mark raised an eyebrow. That was her, wasn't it? Yep. Good call. I nodded, slipping my phone back into my pocket. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally moving forward, and I wasn't looking back. I spent the next few nights crashing at Mark's place, trying to figure out my next steps. I hadn't been back to the house since I left. I knew Jessica was still there, probably waiting, hoping I'd come home so she could spin another story. But I wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. The reality of divorce was starting to sink in. I had spent years building a life with Jessica, and now I had to dismantle it piece by piece. The house, the bank accounts, the memories, everything would have to be divided. But I wasn't sad about losing any of it. I just wanted to be done. Mark helped me find a lawyer. You need someone who won't let her screw you over, he said, so I made the call. The lawyer, a guy named Ryan, didn't sugarcoat anything. Do you want to fight for the house, or are you willing to walk away? He asked. I don't care about the house, I admitted. She can have it. I just want this over with. Ryan nodded. All right, I'll draft the paperwork. But be prepared. She's going to fight this. I knew he was right. Jessica wasn't going to let go without a struggle, and I was right. The next day, she showed up at Mark's apartment. I was in the middle of packing a bag when I heard the knock. It was a frantic, desperate kind of knock, and I knew before I even opened the door who it was. Jessica stood there, eyes red, hair pulled into a messy ponytail, clutching the sleeves of her sweater like it was the only thing holding her together. Daniel, she breathed. Please. I didn't move. What do you want, Jessica? She swallowed hard. I just need to talk to you. Please. 5 minutes. Mark walked into the room, took one look at her, and turned to me. You want me to make her leave? Jessica's eyes darted to him, then back to me, panic flashing across her face. That I sighed. It's fine, Mark. I got it. He hesitated, then gave me a nod before disappearing into the other room. Jessica stepped inside, her hands twisting together. You blocked my number, she said quietly. Yeah. Her lips trembled. I deserve that. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. So what do you want? She hesitated, like she was trying to find the right words. Then, finally, she whispered, I miss you. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. You miss me? That's rich. Her eyes filled with tears. Daniel, I know I messed up. I hate myself for what I did. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Good. I cut in. You should hate yourself. She flinched but didn't look away. I exhaled sharply, trying to keep my voice steady. Jessica, you didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice. Repeatedly. You lied to me. You betrayed me. And now, you think you can just say you miss me, and everything will be fine. She shook her head quickly. No, I know it won't be fine. But I love you, Daniel. I do. And I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you if you let me. I clenched my jaw. You don't love me, Jessica. You love the idea of me. You love the fact that I was always there for you, always trusted you, always believed in you. And now that I'm gone, you don't know what to do with yourself. Her breath hitched. That's not true. I tilted my head. Then answer this. If I hadn't caught you, would you have stopped? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I nodded. That's what I thought. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, I said, my voice cold. And now you have to live with it. She took a shaky step forward. Please, Daniel, I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. Just don't walk away from us. I exhaled slowly. There is no us, Jessica. She let out a choked sob that I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel heartbreak, that I just felt nothing. I already filed for divorce, I said, her face crumpled.
No, inuda.
It's over. She covered her mouth, her whole body shaking. Please, please don't do this. I stepped past her and opened the door. Goodbye, Jessica. She stood there for a moment, frozen in place. Then, finally, she walked out. I shut the door behind her and leaned against it, letting out a long breath. Mark appeared from the hallway. That was brutal, he muttered. Had to be done, I said. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Proud of you, man. I let out a small, tired smile. Yeah, me too. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt lighter. It was really over. And I was finally free. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Jessica tried to reach out a few more times. Emails, messages through mutual friends, even a handwritten letter left in my mailbox. I didn't read any of it. I had made my decision, and nothing she said could change that. The divorce process had started, and I was moving forward, one step at a time. I found a small apartment across town. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom with plain white walls and a kitchen that barely had enough space for a table. But it was mine. No memories of her. No ghosts of what used to be. Just a fresh start. Mark helped me move in, carrying boxes up the narrow stairs while cracking jokes to keep things light. This place has real bachelor energy, he said. Setting down a box labeled kitchen stuff, I smirked. Yeah, well, that's kind of the point. He nodded. How you holding up? I thought about it for a second. Better. It was true. The anger had faded. The heartbreak had dulled. I wasn't waking up every morning thinking about her anymore. The weight of it all was still there, but it was lighter now. Manageable. After we finished unpacking, Mark cracked open a couple of beers, handing me one as we sat on the couch. Well, the mattress on the floor that would eventually be my couch. So, what's next for you? He asked. I took a sip, staring out the window at the city lights. I don't know. Just figuring things out, I guess. Mark clinked his bottle against mine. That's a good enough plan for now. A week later, I got the call from my lawyer. Jessica signed the papers, Ryan said. It's official. I closed my eyes, letting the words sink. It was done. That night, I sat in my new place, scrolling through my phone, and without thinking, I went to my photos. I still had pictures of us. Vacations, holidays, random snapshots of moments that once felt important. I started deleting them one by one. I erased the reminders of a life that no longer existed. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. When I was done, I put my phone down, leaned back against the couch, and let out a slow, steady breath. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward. And that was enough.